The buzz in the DFS world right now is all about contest sims. These powerful new tools are allowing players to identify the best possible lineups to play in their contests. And if you ignore this, you're going to get left in the dust. But if you're anything like me, the first and second and maybe the third time you hear the words contest sim, you're probably thinking, WTF is a contest sim. But if you want to get the most out of these powerful new tools, you need to understand how they work, and that's what I'm going to be covering in this video. My name's Jordan Chan, I'm the head coach here at SaberSim, and in this video, I'm going to make it crystal clear to you what a contest sim is, how they work, and why it's important for your DFS process. And then we'll bounce over and show how to use our powerful new contest sims in the SaberSim app. Let's get into it. A simulation is a computer-generated recreation of something, in this case, your DFS contests. And the goal of contest sims are to recreate the DFS contests you're playing hundreds of thousands of times so you can see what the most profitable lineup is. And this already can be a little bit confusing. What do I exactly mean recreate the slate hundreds of thousands of times? Doesn't the slate just play out once and the most profitable lineup is the one that actually wins, right? And yes, that is true, but sport performance is incredibly high variance, as you can see with Jamar Chase's range of outcomes for the upcoming slate here. The range of possible outcomes is huge for what could actually happen on a slate, and we don't know for sure what is actually going to happen when the slate plays out. The goal of contest sims are to find the lineups that are the most profitable if the slate were to play out over and over and over again, even though we actually will only play the slate out one time. If you're still lost, think about a simple coin flipping game. If you bet $20 and call heads, I'm going to pay you out $100 when it lands on heads, but we're only going to play one time. You're probably running a simple simulation in your head right now for this situation. You know that the coin can end up tails and you're out $20. But if we played this game over and over again, you'd clean me out. But DFS is a much more complicated game than flipping coins. When we're thinking about projections, ownership, correlations, different payout structures for different contests, and then trying to quickly combine all those to think about what the most profitable lineups are to play, it becomes a really challenging problem to solve in your head quickly. A DFS contest sim does what you just did in your head with the coin flipping game for DFS in just seconds. So how does this actually work? How does a computer ultimately recreate a DFS contest? Well, you need a few things to start. The first is you need to know the ways that the actual games on the slate you're playing could play out. And average projections aren't going to work here. We know players don't score their average projected points 100% of the time. You need to know how often each player scores the full range of outcomes of their possible fantasy points and what the games look like in each of those situations when players are scoring different points. You also need to know what your opponents in your contest are going to play and what their lineups look like. In DFS, our goal is to outscore the other lineups in the contest, not reach an arbitrary threshold of fantasy points. So we need to know what our opponents are playing, what stacks they're using, what players are showing up in the lineups, and what the lineups themselves actually look like. And finally, we need to know the payout structure of the contest you're playing. If you're playing a cash game, you don't get extra money for taking first place compared to beating half of the field. And if you're playing a Milli Maker, 30 to 40% of the entire prize pool comes from beating 200,000 or more other lineups in the contest. The payout structure affects the profitability of different lineups because a lineup is going to earn more or less where it finishes in that contest based on how prizes are awarded in that contest. So what actually happens when a contest sim runs? What's happening behind the scenes? It's easiest to think about it one step at a time. So we'll take one lineup that we ultimately want to see how good is this lineup played into the contest. And we'll enter it into a pretend contest made up of all the lineups that we think your opponents might play in a particular contest here. Then we will play out the slate one time. We'll assign fantasy points to every single player in the pool based on how they did in a given way that the slate could play out. Maybe Anthony Richardson rushes for 2 touchdowns, Trevor Lawrence throws 3 touchdowns, and Calvin Ridley catches 2 of them. For every single game on the slate, we'll give a player a fantasy point output of what they scored in a hypothetical simulation of the way that the games could play out. After that, we can assign all those fantasy points to all the players and tally up what each lineup actually scored. And using the payout structure of the contest you're playing, figure out how much each lineup won in that hypothetical slate. Now, at this point, the information you get from one simulation doesn't really tell you anything. At least, it doesn't tell you anything more than playing the coin flipping game one time and ending up on tails. We need to repeat this process over and over and over again until we have a very large sample size to see what lineups were the most profitable on average. This is usually indicated with ROI, the return on investment you make for the entry fee you paid to play that lineup. So why is this actually a good thing? Why should you care about this at all? Well, contest sims take the very complex problem of DFS that has a bunch of different moving parts and variables like projections and ownership and stack types and payout structures, and they find the solution to that problem by testing out all of the possible options in the form of different lineups you could play over and over and over again. They take into account all of these different variables of DFS strategy and just go straight to the source, calculating what lineups were the most profitable in your contests in the simulations. Now, just saying something is a contest sim or uses contest sims is not a silver bullet. The inputs to your simulation have to be accurate. As the saying goes, garbage in, garbage out. So let's go back to the three things we need for a contest sim. How the games themselves on the slate could actually play out, what the lineups your opponents might play in the contest are, and the payout structure of the contest you're playing. We only know one of these things for sure before the slate locks, and that's the payout structure. How the games could play out and the field lineups, or what lineups your opponents might play, are not known for sure before the slate locks. Your contest sim is only going to be as good as that information is accurate. For football, for example, to accurately simulate an NFL DFS contest, you need to accurately simulate NFL football, and that's where SaberSim comes in. Our contest sims leverage our play-by-play game simulations of every single game on the slate. We're not using our average projections or fake player distributions built from our average projections to simulate your contests. We're actually using real NFL play-by-play game simulations to ultimately simulate out the contest. This is crucial for accurately figuring out what the lineups that are going to be the best in the contest are. You need to understand what football looks like to figure out what the most profitable NFL DFS lineups can be in those contests. And in order to accurately project what your opponents or the field are going to do with their lineups in your contest, you need to understand how different DFS players play different contests at different stakes and entry limits and sizes. If you've played and looked at your actual ownerships in a single entry contest versus an MME contest before, you're familiar with the idea that ownerships and lineup constructions can be very different from different contest types. SaberSim offers 13 different pre-generated field lineups that update anytime we update our ownership projections, so you have a strong sense of what different fields at different stakes and entry limits might actually look like for that slate. Remember that ultimately your contest sims are only going to be as accurate as the inputs to that simulation are accurate. So as you're navigating and exploring these new powerful DFS tools, remember to be skeptical. How are the different outcomes for the different games on that slate being calculated, and what does that process look like? And how are the field lineups that are being used as the hypothetical field you'll see in your contest being generated? Making sure that those are accurate and built on a sound foundation is crucial to having success with contest sims. Now let me show you the quickest way to get up to speed using SaberSim's sophisticated contest sims in your DFS process. The first thing I want to do is pull in my entries file here so I know what the payout structures and the stakes and entry limits of the contests I'm playing are. I'll go ahead and upload my entries file, grab it from DraftKings, I've already registered there, and we'll go ahead, find that file, and get it uploaded. I'm playing the $1.20 max for this particular slate. All I have to do here is right-click and click Add Contest Sim. This is automatically going to pull in some of the inputs we were talking about before. It's going to apply the hypothetical field here as a field for a low stakes 20 max, which is exactly what this contest is, and it's pulling in the contest size and the payout structure for this contest so that we know how much winnings to apply to each lineup each time we are simulating out the contest. Click Save Settings, and now I'm good to go over and build some lineups here. Now I'm going to go pretty quickly through this part here. We have a lot of other tutorials on our YouTube channel going more in depth about how to set up your build and get lineups that you're happy with. But for now, I'm just going to set the inputs here to the default settings for a 20 max that has 50,000 entrants and build lineups. SaberSim's now building 5,000 different lineups based on our play-by-play game simulations that are also used in the contest sims. So we'll give SaberSim a minute to run this build here, and we'll pick it up in just a sec. Now that we have our lineups, we're ready to run our contest sim. So we'll go to the contest sim settings here and just check in that the first down is the contest we want to simulate and click Run Contest Sim. Now behind the scenes, it's doing exactly what I mentioned before. It's taking a given lineup here, say this one at the top of your pool, and it's putting it into a contest made up of our projected field. Then it's running in one simulation a given way that the game can play out, assigning the fantasy points, creating the standings for that given simulation, and then assigning payouts based on the payout structure of this contest. That process repeats 100,000 times for this lineup. And then that entire process repeats for all 5,000 of our lineups in our pool here until we ultimately end up with ROI and other metrics describing each lineup. Now that the contest sim is completed, you'll see new metrics show up under each of the lineups. We have the ROI, which is the return on investment that this lineup makes every single time it's played into this contest. We have the risk-adjusted ROI, which takes into account not only the upside of that lineup being profitable and how often that lineup is profitable, but also the downside of that lineup not cashing at all. Finally, we have win rate and the cash rate, how often the lineup took first and how often that lineup showed up in the money in that contest at all, the standard deviation of the ROI, and the number of times this exact lineup was played in the field that we're using here for this particular contest. Now, these metrics are useful for looking into on your own, but the most important thing you can do here now is sort your lineups to figure out what are the most profitable lineups you could play in the contest. And I'm going to recommend sorting by risk-adjusted ROI, which again is taking into account how often that lineup is profitable and how much it's winning when that lineup is successful, but also the downside of that lineup not cashing at all. These are now the 20 most profitable lineups from our pool of 5,000 in 100,000 contest sims of the $1.20 max on this slate this Sunday. SaberSim's contest sims are fully integrated into the rest of the SaberSim experience. From here, we could set min uniques to diversify, we can increase or decrease the min and max exposures for any players in our pool, we can make adjustments to our stacks or our stack exposures, but for now, I'm going to assume that I just want to play the top 20 most profitable lineups from my pool, so I'm going to get them entered into my contests. To do that, I'll click Save to My Contests and go ahead and save these 20 lineups to the first down. We can get those saved here, and then SaberSim is ready to give us a brand new entries file that we're ready to upload onto DraftKings so that we're ready for Sunday here. We'll go ahead and get this uploaded here, and just like that, we're all set. Contest sims are here to stay in DFS, and they will make a huge difference to your DFS profitability, but you have to understand how they work. One, to use them effectively in your process, but two, to understand what a good contest sim actually looks like. SaberSim's contest sims give you a massive edge on the field because of 3 reasons. One, our contest sims are powered by play-by-play game simulations of every game on the slate for every sport. 2, we accurately project field lineups, the lineups that your opponents are likely to play for different contest types based on stakes and entry limit. And 3, the experience of using SaberSim Contest Sims is seamlessly integrated into the rest of the SaberSim app, giving you the power and control over your lineups you need to ultimately be successful executing your process. We have a completely free 5-day trial to the SaberSim Ultimate plan, which includes our contest sims on our site, sabersim.com. So come check it out for free 5 days now. If you have any questions for me, you can always reach out in our Discord server or by emailing us at support@sabersim.com. And in the meantime, thank you so much for watching and good luck.